let's record this actually. We're here with Adam Hyde, and we're going to discuss the industry standard for the publishing industry and how book type can perhaps be the next paradigm in publishing.
So what happens is that the publishing industry has a kind of a four-stage process. It's involved, first of all, in creating single-authored works, right? So the works are created by an author in a very linear production cycle. It's author, editor, proofreader, designer, right? The second stage of this is actually taking the object to, of creating the object, the book, which is generally a linear narrative which is sold, and the revenue from those sales is what's meant to pay for the entire ecosystem. And then the last stage of it is that this content goes into an archive, a bookshelf, or whatever. Now, the innovations that are happening in the publishing industry right now because of the net and digital media is basically happening around the artifact itself. So the book is transformed into an electronic book, and also around the distribution channels where the book goes to the market. So instead of being distributed through bookstores, it goes through online channels, right? Well, this actually happened before electronic books because paper books were sold online. Now, the two areas that are actually the most interesting, which are totally untouched by the publishing industry and what actually breaks the publishing industry apart, are the first and last parts of these cycles. First of all, replacing single-authored works with collaboratively produced works. That totally pulls apart the publishing industry. The last part of it is that books should not die. Books should never remain static. They should be continually improved. So the last part of it. Now, neither of these can the current state of the publishing industry live with, because if you take reuse to its natural conclusion, the content has to be absolutely open. Otherwise, it's never going to be reused. There are too many barriers in place, and the tool set and everything is not architect in this way. And on the other side of things, the publishing industry can't deal with collaborative production because they are relying on this romantic post-Renaissance idea of the artist, the single brain, the monolith that understands everything and just gives you the truth. And that has real marketing value in their world. And they can't dilute that. Even though every book in the world is being produced collaboratively, you always only see one author's name on the cover, generally speaking, right? Mm-hmm. So that's,
meaning it's building on others' knowledge.
Yeah.
Yes, absolutely.
And all this work is collaboratively, but these people are obscured. You even see stuff in newspapers where the publishers will talk about the ghost writer, right? And they never mention the ghost. Like, I've seen interviews where they said we went with the ghost writer for lunch. And the ghostwriter is never mentioned, So collaboration within the publishing industry is absolutely obscured. It's terrible. So what book type does is that actually makes the whole. It collapses. It gets rid of the linear production cycle, and it turns it into what we're used to, which is online, which is social collaborative production, right? Where everything is transparent. You can enter in at any point. You can leave at any point. You can develop the works as a transparent collaborative group, and you can manage a book not as a sort of a product, but as a community. You energize people to come to it. You get them involved. And this kind of thing can only, of course, happen under free culture, which is why free culture licenses, because copyright is a barrier for collaboration on this level. If you have to sign away rights and everything before you can actually participate, that threshold is already too high that will deter collaboration, and it puts collaboration in a funny space. So you want to have these processes open and transparent, and you want, and what I've found is that there are enormous efficiencies and enormous gains from this process. One, you get multiple points of view. You get so many people putting into creating a piece of work that you get intensely rich dialogues and transfer of information. The process of creating the book in itself is a community building process, but it's also an educative process. And you can really imagine, for example, students creating their own textbooks, stuff like this. The other part of it is that you have, when you build up a community around a book, you have a community that will bond and will continue to work on this book and keep this book alive. Now that's not always the way, but it's mostly the way that these things happen. If people are bonding around a content source and they're really passionate about it, then they'll keep working with each other for a long time. Some of the other amazing things you get out of this is that you can produce books in record amounts of time. So we've produced books on very technical, concrete subjects in 2 days. One of them, Introduction to the Command Line, it's like a 300-page book, was written by 20 people over 2 days collaboratively, most of them remotely. And Benjamin Marco Hill, who's on the advisory board for the Wikimedia Foundation, is also on the board for the Free Software Foundation, has written numerous books, including books on this subject, and he wrote the Ubuntu book released by Prentice Hill, said that this book, which we wrote in 2 days, was the best book on its topic. So these are quality works that have been produced, and these have been produced in 2 days. And then, of course, you get the additional advantage that environments that have to support this kind of production are naturally open, right? So the sources are available, and they're available to be changed. And that's not often the case in the open publishing world, where the sources are obscured and the final result is published as PDF, which is not a reusable format. So the tool sets that are available, and there's not many, I mean, I only know of book type that enables this, enables also for the ease of forking of content, of remixing of content, and reuse of the content. And by reuse, one of the major use cases is translation. So content can migrate across languages once you remove all these barriers. And it's still difficult, you still have to work up communities and get people convinced to do these kind of things like translation. Sometimes it just happens. But the point is it can happen because the content is available in a framework which enables reuse.
Okay, so this sounds like amazing advantages. Now tell me about the disadvantages. What are the challenges here? One thing that comes to my mind is how are you going to get the quality control, or like bickering or about content?
Well, the thing is that you treat the book as a community, and you manage the processes, the social processes, and the social processes then look after the content. So everybody wants to be involved in producing a good book. So you work with the people involved, and you say, okay, so because the formulation is never the same twice, right? So you work with the people you have, and you say, okay, so what do we have? What's your opinion of it? Do we need to bring in extra eyes? Is there someone who really likes proofreading? Do they want to go through the whole thing? And you just pass the roles around. So there's not this kind of, often there's not this author, editor, proofreader kind of linear structure, but people are passing roles around all the time. And the production process is one of people talking about the content, swapping roles, and improving things on small chunks at a time, right? So you'll write a little bit, and then you'll proofread somebody else's piece, and then you'll go and write some more, or you'll restructure something or whatever. And it's a very, very I've done 40 of intensive collaboration processes, which we call book sprints, and they produce very good books in very short amounts of time, and actually to the point where the amount of the quantity of the books produced is also such that you can't really have more than 10 to 12 people involved in the process of producing one book at any one time, because the amount of content being produced in 5 days is just too much. You can't maintain an overview of it. You get 70,000 to 80,000 words. Yeah. So the disadvantages, I don't see them. I see quality books being produced in a massive amount of time, but you do need to have an understanding of facilitation to facilitate these things, of community management, to make them happen. You have to have people involved in this production process which are not editors and writers, but are facilitators and collaborators.
Do you run into the issue of trolls?
No. In 5 years of Floss Manuals, we've never had one malicious edit. Yeah. And it's a totally open environment.
Okay. Is book type itself open source, freely available?
Totally open source.
Excellent.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. The revolution is coming.